Hello, I'm Charlotte Cohen and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Wednesday, the 21st of January. And today we are focusing on the transfer window.
It's normal when you sign for a new club, then it's important to settle him a little bit down, but give him also the first taste here on the stadium, what it means for us. I think he will have a good welcome. Yeah, he's ready to play for us.
Have Rangers got a master plan for the window? And it's now 3 weeks in and still no moves from Celtic.
And that game at Tynecastle's a real witness test now, isn't it? I think if they haven't got 2 or 3 players in by then I suspect the fans' anger will reach thermonuclear levels. And I think they'll be entitled.
We'll look at what's preventing progress for Martin O'Neill in the transfer market, while other clubs may have to speed up their recruitment.
Hearts could potentially be without captain Lawrence Shanklin for up to 2 months due to a hamstring injury.
We'll make sense of the transfer activity or inactivity right here.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
And alongside me this morning, Times Scottish football correspondent Michael Grant. Michael, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Charlotte. Yeah. I'm as good as I can ever be at this time of the day.
Excellent news. And alongside us, Joe Savage, football consultant, former Hearts sporting director, and now delighted puppy owner.
Yes, absolutely. And I could just reiterate what Michael says. I feel the same.
Good stuff. Well, we'll get cracking. Plenty to get into this morning. Let's start with Rangers because they moved pretty swiftly at the start of the window. Michael, it looks like they've got a proper plan in place with proper targets and are going after them and getting deals done.
Yeah, Charlotte, I think that's exactly the way to put it. They've identified areas in the team that they wanted to upgrade, and it looks like they've done that and done it pretty swiftly. And listen, you never know. Time will tell in terms of signings in the past. We've seen 1,000 of them that have come in with a reputation and with expectations and not lived up to that. But, you know, you can take it on face value, and the deals that they've done so far look pretty promising. Tochi Chikwani from Sturm Graz, £4 million centre midfielder. They wanted a number 6, and that's what he's going to bring in. Tur Romans, the left back from Belgium, for $3.5 million. And the one I think that they're most excited about, obviously, is Andreas Skov Olsen, the Danish international winger from Wolfsburg, on a loan to buy. I think the option would cost him about $9 million. I mean, his last season or so has not been spectacular, but his body of work, his career is impressive. You don't get 40 caps for Denmark unless you're a serious footballer, you know. So I think there's a lot of excitement about him. And they maybe still want to do a bit of business. They maybe still want to get a centre half. Maybe still want to get a centre forward. But I think Rangers supporters seem pretty pleased and pretty impressed by the way the club's done its business in the last week or two. Or I dare say Joe will be able to tell us that this kind of work actually goes back a long period, but in terms of getting it done in the window, it's been impressive.
Well, yeah, Joe, I mean, as Michael says, Rangers might want to bring in a couple more. How many is achievable in this January window?
Yeah, it's going back to what Michael says. It's I would imagine it really is impressive what from Rangers, considering if they changed their manager. So their thought process to start with under Russell would have been different to what Danny wanted. So it seems quite seamless what they've done. They've went from one manager to a new manager. He's decided we want these types of players. Impressive signings as well. I totally agree with Michael that you look on paper, you look at their CV, their track records, and you think, it's good to get them done so quickly. That's like when I was at Hearts, like we always aimed to try and get the players in the first week of January, and it's easier said than done because maybe not so much a problem for Rangers because the GBE maybe doesn't work for them because like Olsen having 40 caps, he'll be an automatic 15 points straight in. And going back to like the players, like I think they might want to do another centre back, but again, like Celtic, they're carrying a big squad, so they might want to try and move a few players out as well, just to lighten the load. Because again, having worked with so many managers, they always think they want a big squad until they've got the big squad, and then once they've got the big squad, they're always saying to the sporting director or whoever it may be, we need to trim the squad, we need to try and move some players out. So I would imagine that that's probably their plan now. And I know they've moved Lyle Cameron out. He's obviously went to Aberdeen. So I can see them trying to move some players out before they try and bring more in, because they seem a bit top heavy, to be honest with you, in terms of there's a lot of players there. But again, totally agree with Michael. I think it's an impressive start for Rangers, and Danny Rowe's done excellent, hasn't he, since he's been in? He's been brilliant, so fair play to them.
Michael, is there anyone you see, Joe says, if they want to try and get some players out the door, is there anyone you see kind of being top of that list at Rangers?
I guess top of the list might be Danilo. I would imagine if you look through the squad, there's probably a fair bit of Deadwood might be a little bit hard, but I think Danilo is a guy that cost him a lot of money and hasn't really ever caught fire. He's shown glimpses, shown little flashes that he might emerge as a Rangers player without really bedding down. The other thing I would just add on to Joe's point as well, I mean, at the moment, it shows how quickly Danny Röhl has impressed the club, I think, because I think Danny Röhl is quite central to this recruitment, and I think that shows how much faith they have in him because of his early results. Because don't forget, they don't have a guy who was doing Joe's job at the moment. I mean, Kevin Thelwell was binned, obviously, and they've replaced the chief executive, but they haven't yet replaced the kind of sporting director, technical director role. So I think there is more reliance on Danny Röhl than you might expect at the moment. And again, that's credit to him that he's kind of earned the club's trust to that extent so quickly.
Well, let's look at the other side of the city, because things have certainly not been as organised or successful over there. I mean, Joe, they're clearly in desperate need of a striker. Still no replacement for Kyogo over, like a year down the line. They've been linked with pretty much everyone under the sun, but how close do you think they are to finally getting a deal over the line?
Again, going back to what we said about Rangers, I think Celtic's issue now is they had, obviously, Brendan Rodgers starts the season. Brendan has his ideas and his plans. They bring Martin O'Neill in. Martin does a great job in the interim spell. They then bring Wilfred Nancy in. Wilfred's in for, a month, 33 days, I think. And then he's probably got all his ideas and all his plans and what he's wanting to target. They're then having to rip that up. Martin's having to come back. I've seen the interviews with Martin saying that he wasn't expecting to come back. He spent Christmas at home. That Paul Tisdale's obviously left the club. So that's made them in a wee bit of turmoil. But I don't know about you guys. I always just expect, I think Celtic historically, they always produce in January. They always seem to deliver 2 or 3 signings where you just go, yeah, can see that working. And that's what I expect. I expect Celtic to go out in the last 10 days and just not so much blow people away, but just bring in a few players where everyone goes, right, okay, we can see how this is going to work. And I've seen that they've got that boy from, is it the German club? They've got him linked. What's his name? I'm trying to think his name.
Thomas Kavankara from Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Yeah, good CV in terms of what he's done previously. And it looks as if it's going to be a loan with an option. Again, sensible, because they don't know who the manager's going to be at the end of the season. So I just expect, Charlotte, I always expect Celtic to just really deliver in January, because they're the one club that, again, Rangers, to be fair to their credit, have done it as well. But Celtic are the one club that have the money just to go and spend and get some good players in. Historically, January's a loan market. It's very, very difficult to sign players in January in terms of a permanent. But Celtic always seem to be able to do it. And I think they'll do it again this year. And I think it's got the makings of a brilliant end to the season, because Hearts are clearly strengthening as well.
How much of this struggle for Celtic this month, Michael, do you think is down to the changing of managers, or the multiple changing of managers, and having Martin O'Neill in, who's unlikely to be there next season? Because I suppose they've known they've needed to replace Kyogo for a year, regardless of who the manager is. Yeah,
it's interesting. I did a big sort of piece on this at the weekend, and speaking to a few people who are actually non-Celtic people, but who are kind of in the business, and who are actually been sympathetic to Celtic, believe it or not. And I know their fans are up in arms and on fire about this, but a couple of people that spoke to me were kind of sympathetic, because they said the level of striker that Celtic are looking at are players that might think they have a chance of going to the English Premier League. And if they feel they've got a chance of going to the Premier League in January, they'll hold on and they'll wait until they see if that chance might materialise. And of course, that leaves Celtic hanging on. And then that's why you often see business done at the end of the window when that player realises, okay, I'm not going to get it. I know England's not the be all and end all, but the wages they can offer down there are substantial. So that leaves it's because of the level of player that you're trying to get. Basically, it can be difficult to get that business done. They've got this guy. It looks like he's coming in, Kavanka. We don't know if he'll fit the bill. He's tall and he's quick, apparently, decent enough in the air. You can see that being the kind of player that Martin O'Neill would work with. But to answer your question, Charlotte, I mean, it's not just the turnover and the turbulence of the managers. I mean, you've also had Paul Tisdale, who was the head of football operations. He's left. He didn't really impress very many people in his work and his recruitment. So if that wasn't working and they haven't replaced him yet, it strikes me that the whole recruitment department is a bit kind of hollow at the moment at Celtic, and maybe they're looking for. I presume they are looking for somebody to come in and replace Tisdale. So all of that are factors, all of that contributes to the difficulties they've had. But it's put enormous pressure on the board and chief executive, Michael Nicholson. And, you can argue that's self-inflicted in a lot of cases, but they're under real pressure to deliver signings, not just bodies, but actual upgrades on what they've got already, because otherwise this league title is going to slip away from them.
And I suppose, Joe, regardless of what happens this season, it's very likely that Celtic will, come the summer, probably need to do quite a lot of work on the pitch, off the pitch, and just have, I suppose, maybe a major reset. Yeah,
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I find that Celtic have won 13 of the last 14 league titles, and it just not so much blows my mind, but I don't know how they've got themselves in this position. I just can't understand how you can be so dominant and then things like this happen. And the Wilfred Nancy appointment clearly has not worked out the way the club would have probably hoped that it would have. Luckily for them, they've had Martin O'Neill there, but I know they've got obviously Sean Maloney in the background. They've got Mark Fotheringham back, Stephen McManus, Gavin Stratton still remained there, so Stevie Woods as well. So they've got that core group that understands what it takes to play for Celtic and manage Celtic. So I think Celtic always land on their feet, personally. I just think that the one club that when people start to doubt them, they just deliver. And they've had it again with Ange Postecoglou. I remember when Ange came in, when I was at Hearts, we beat them the first game of the season. What a night that was at Tynecastle, to be fair. Just because obviously fans were back for the first time after COVID, and it was just great to be in a stadium again where supporters could cheer and things like that. But I remember when we were there, we were speaking about Celtic then and saying, this is an interesting appointment, but he looks like he's got a fair idea of what he's going to do. And everyone obviously doubted Ange at that point and were thinking, oh, who's this random? And look what he's ended up doing. So Celtic have always had a history of doing that, Ronnie Deila as well. And I know Wilfred Nancy might be the exception now. They might look at that and think, well, we tried that and it didn't really work. But Celtic's a big club. It's an institution. People want to manage them because you're guaranteed normally to be winning trophies. You're getting into Champions League. You can spend good money in players, recruitment. You've got 60,000 fans. You've got two or three training grounds you've got now? Do you know what I mean? Everything's set up for them. It's a brilliant job for someone, so I could imagine that they've been inundated with CVs, and it'll be the same with Paul Tisdale's replacement. I think loads of people will look at that and think that's a great job to be having. So it's weird to say this, but I don't think Celtic will be worried. I think they'll be thinking, right, get through this season. Martin hopefully can win us the league, and then once the season ends, we can really start to put plans in place for next season.
Charlotte, very quickly, the other thing about Celtic is this figure of £77 million in the bank. I mean, that, and listen, we know they're not in the Champions League this season, so that money has to start being used to pay the wage bill and to keep things at the same level they've been at. But for supporters, they just see that figure and they find it very, very difficult to get their heads around the fact that their club struggles to get players in with this mountain of money in a Scottish context. that they don't seem to be able to spend. So as I say, that I'm sure the board, if they ever spoke to us, which they never do, I'm sure they could talk us through that money and what it is needed for and why it needs to be stockpiled to that extent. But fans, I think, really struggle with that.
Yeah, the amount of times I've seen that number bandied about on social media for people using it as ammunition to say, why haven't you signed anyone? So,
exactly.
Yeah. As I say, every time we talk about Celtic, we could talk about this until the cows come home. Let's look at some of the other clubs, because Joe, you mentioned about the title race and Hearts. They have done some seriously good business this month so far. They seem to have accelerated the deal for Rogers Mato, who was due to come in the summer. They'd agreed a pre-contract with him, but looks like he could be coming in this month in light of Lawrence Shankland's hamstring injury. It's just a club doing decent business, isn't it?
Yeah, I just think they're well organised. I'd like to think I played a part in that, setting that all up, to be honest with you. Because when I went in, we were in the Championship in Scotland and we didn't have a recruitment department, didn't have data, didn't have any analysis of that, and I left them in third place in the league. But going on to what Tony Bloom and the Jamestown have done, it's allowed them to open up that scope. And also what I think is key is they really trust the Jamestown. They really trust the algorithm and the analytics and the data to identify players that Derek McInnes and the guys in there will be really happy to be signing. And if you look at what they've obviously done with Claudio Braga and Kizaridis and Magnuson, and the list obviously can go on. So it's a brilliant position to be in, and they'll be looking, or they would have been looking at Celtic and Rangers thinking, oh, yeah, beauty, look at this. But now obviously I think we can all agree Rangers look as if they've got an idea of what they're wanting to do. Celtic will definitely get back to doing that. I have no doubts about that. But at the moment, Hearts can be that 1-2 steps ahead. They're obviously top of the league. And yeah, totally agree. They've signed some good players already. I would imagine they'll do maybe 2 or 3 more because they've lost Shankland to injury, they've lost Devlin to an injury. So they'll want to make sure that they keep that momentum going. And with what they've got available to them, that like the world's their oyster in terms of the players that they can go and attract and try and sign. Now, like, we always found that when we were there, like when we were sitting third or fourth in the league, you could feel that there was real interest from players that you probably never thought you could get, because they're looking, thinking, oh, they could maybe win the Scottish Cup, or they could maybe get to the Europa League or the Conference League. Hearts can now say, look, guys, come and help us get into the Champions League. This is where we can end up. And every player that you ever speak to, they want to play the Champions League. They want to hear that music. So they've got a great chance of doing that, Hearts. So all credit to them.
And you mentioned about Cammy Devlin being out injured. He's also out of contract in the summer, as is Benny Beningame. Michael, do you think they'll be looking to do business in the middle of the park this month, or do you think they can maybe, I suppose, afford to hold out until the summer?
Yeah, I think they will be looking to do business in the middle of the park, Charlotte. I think they were being linked as well with the guy Laurent Mendy, haven't they, at Forest Green Rovers, who's a experienced midfielder. I think they've had a bid rejected for him, but I would imagine they'll go back in. I suspect he'll be another one that Jamestown have flagged up to the club. It's really interesting looking at it last night. Very briefly, for a comparison, to go back to Celtic and the striker that they've been linked with. You see all on social media Celtic fans turning up their nose a bit and going, oh, what's this guy going to do? And that is because they've got so little confidence in their board of directors at the moment, and just the way the club has been run. Whereas Hearts are the opposite. They've got so much confidence in Jamestown and the way the club has been run that any time they're linked with a player, they look at him in a positive kind of frame, because they assume we have signed so many good, shrewd signings that this will be another one. So, and that's a lovely place for a club to be in, where you've got that kind of buy-in from supporters. I mean, the guy, if he comes, will have to prove it, but it's clearly been one of the foundations of Hearts' rise has been the kind of quality of the signings. Whether that's domestic names or previously unknown names, they've had a great amount of delivery from these deals they've done this season and last season or two.
Elsewhere, Aberdeen, They seemed to have had a really busy summer window. No one's really set the heather alight. They are also in a similar position. Celtic in between managers. Joe, do you see them being busy until the end of the month? Do you see them getting much work done?
Do you know what? It really is interesting that they're signing players, obviously, without a new head coach or a new manager in place. So they've obviously got a lot of belief and trust in Lutz, the new sporting director, and obviously Peter leaving, I would imagine, we're having a big say in that as well. I think Aberdeen look as if they're going to be busy. They've already done the centre-back Morrison, haven't they? And they've obviously done Cameron as well. Two, again, to use a word Michael just used there, shrewd signings. Like you would like to think, certainly Lyle Cameron will know the Scottish League, but Morrison's obviously Scottish and come through at Celtic's academy, so he's coming in. I think that's, good signings. I would imagine they'll be busier, but again, they probably need to move some players out as well. Probably a bit top heavy. Got too many players as it is. Again, I think that's a problem that Hearts are facing as well, is that they keep signing players, which is brilliant, but eventually you're going to have to look at your squad and say, right, we've got 28, 29, 30 players. We need to move some of these players out because A, they'll be getting bored sitting on the bench or sitting in the stand, but also B, you're paying their salaries to not play football. So I think Aberdeen will be looking at that as well. They'll be wanting to move players out whilst trying to bring players in. And I think that Aberdeen are a big club, aren't they, as well? They were in the Conference League group stages this year. They won the Scottish Cup last year. They've got through the next round the other day. So it's an appealing club for someone to be signing for as well. So it's all to play for them as well.
Michael, how much do you think Aberdeen need to do in January? I suppose they've had real struggles in the league this season so far. Do you see them needing to do quite a lot of work before the end of the window in order to kind of pick themselves back up domestically?
Yeah, I do. As Joe says, they've got Cameron in, they've got Morrison in, Toyosu, Olasanya looks to be on his way as well, striker. And I'm told that a number 6 midfielder and a goalkeeper are still targets as well. I think Aberdeen have got an awful lot of technically talented players, but it's not necessarily. Doesn't make it. They're not making a good side. I think there are obviously issues that they lack in the team in terms of aggression and energy and just that kind of competitiveness that we know does well in Scotland. You have to build a team that's suitable for your environment, and I don't think Aberdeen have done that well enough. And I think maybe getting Cameron in, who, for all that he's a good footballer, he's also a competitive wee guy. He's got plenty about him. And Morrison should know the league. All the Asanyas will know the league, and he's a physical guy as well. I'm not in any sense denigrating Scottish football, but you've got to acknowledge what works here. And you can have really talented players, of course you can, but you've got to get the balance right in the team. And I don't think Aberdeen have managed that this season. They've had too many of the summer signings just haven't delivered. And maybe they would, maybe 2 or 3 of them would start to deliver in a team that works and functions better. But I think you're seeing Aberdeen trying to reset a little bit in January, and it's difficult when you don't have a manager, which is why I think they're doing loans rather than transfers, because obviously the new guy might come in and have different ideas of what he wants in the next couple of weeks.
And Kilmarnock, they've just changed their manager, so have somebody in place to do some January business. But Joe, do you think their market is the loan market, getting players in on a temporary basis until the end of the season?
Yeah, I would think so. They've done the goalkeeper Kel Roos, haven't they? So I think what they'll be needing, I would imagine, from kind of knowing Neil, I don't really know Billy, but knowing Neil, is that they want ready-made. They want people to come in and make an impact immediately, which generally would mean loans for them. People that are not getting game time at other clubs that they can say, come in and help us out for the next 4 months, get us away from this bottom two. I think that it's, again, January historically is a loan market. You don't want to lose your best players, and if you do lose your best players, you want to lose them at a premium, and a lot of clubs can't pay the premium in January for whatever reason. So I think that your Kellys of this world, maybe. I've seen Dundee have signed a couple of players as well, Dundee United. I would imagine that loans, especially loans, and Michael touched upon it earlier, that loans in the last week of the window are crucial. They're vital. That's when people realise, I can't get that big move to the Championship or League One. Well, Scottish Premiership sounds like a good league, and it's competitive league, and you get to play against Celtic and Rangers and things like that. So I would imagine that Kelly are really, really busy just now, actively seeking to get players in, and maybe even get players that are potentially in the last 6 months of their contract might get released, and they can give them an 18-month deal or a 2.5-year deal, just give them that bit of security. So it's really difficult, January. I know I'm sort of repeating myself here, but having done it for so long, that it's not as easy as people think, just to go and turn up and start throwing cash at people and say, come to us. So many things need to fall in your favour, so many variables. It's the domino effect. You sign one player, it means that club that you're signing them from needs to sign someone else, and then they need to sign it for another club. They might refuse, and then it might come back to you and say, well, we can't get who we want, so we're going to have to ask for more money from you to sign this player. So I would imagine that Kelly are in that position just now where they've probably got a lot of irons in the fire. They're asking questions of a lot of players and basically seeing what one falls for them.
Well, that is all we've got time for. Many thanks to Michael and Joe, and thank you very much for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will catch you again very soon.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.